and welcome to Our Time. Mark Ashenden is the co-founder and executive director of Seed Terminator, an innovation company whose immediate purpose is to develop, manufacture and sell weed seed termination technology and to stimulate change and make the biggest possible difference to world food production. Through deploying the best non-chemical weed control technology possible to as many farmers as possible, as soon as possible, and as economically as possible. Well, he's not terminating now because he's here. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Malcolm. How are
That's
you?
such a big introduction.
You did well.
Thank you very much. But you've done well because what you're, is promoting the right word? Because you didn't actually develop this technology, but you've taken it on board.
Yeah, well, my nephew Nick invented it, and the whole idea is to say that herbicide resistance is real.
Yep.
And the last chance you can actually kill a weed seed is actually at harvest. So to take the technology and develop technology, fit it up to a harvester and smash weed seeds is what Nick's thesis when he did his doctorate was all about.
Pretty amazing.
Oh, it's incredible. And you know, the science of trying to say how many times and at what speed do I have to hit a weed seed to devitalise it loses me. But he worked through that process and did his PhD, and then he wanted to invent something that actually physically does it. So it wasn't a theoretical thing.
It's not nice having smart people in the family, is it?
Well, I sometimes become his favourite uncle, and he's sometimes my favourite nephew.
We've got some vision here of what it looks like in the field, I suppose is the best way to describe it.
Absolutely.
The thing is, this is not just for one specific vehicle here. We can have a look at this. So this is harvesting.
Yes, and basically the combine harvester, or the modern combine harvester, is a factory on wheels. And what we do is we basically sit at the back of that, and anything other than grain, we smash it up.
And what I didn't get initially was, so you're harvesting the grain, and what is it doing? Is it digging into the soil and pulling up the weeds by the roots, sort of thing, before it seeds? Or
No, what happens is at harvest, the crop is reached its height and its peak and it's ripe. What the clever little weeds do is they actually work their way up there, and they're actually shedding their seeds at the same time.
Oh, so clever little weeds.
As the harvest, very much so, as the harvester goes through it, picks them up, collects them, threshes them, and then puts them on basically an auger, and comes up in the inside of the combine harvester, and the grain, which is what the whole purpose it is, goes into the grain bin and the receival bin. The rest of it, there's two lots that come out the back. How
does it know which is which?
It doesn't, it just takes all the grain.
Right.
And the heavier stuff, which it doesn't process, and the straw keeps going through the back of the harvester, and it's the material other than grain that is heavier, and it falls down the back of the harvester and would normally just go straight back on the soil and be next year's weeds.
Yep.
And that includes the crop that you're doing, because the grain that's escaped is next year's weeds. And so there's two functions that happen at the back of the harvester. One is the straw fraction gets cut up in a chopper and flung out back, and the heavier stuff,
which is worthwhile going back into the soil.
It's very much so, because it's all organic, and putting it back on there. And the chaff piece, which is the heavier stuff, and it's mostly weeds and just organic matter, that would generally just fall at the back. So what we're doing is we're intercepting that with a multi-stage hammer mill, and we put a couple of chutes on it. We channel all of this material other than grain into there, put it through the multi-stage hammer mill, smash the bejesus out of it, and put it back on the soil. And it's organic matter. It does a couple of things. One is that it'll save a chemical application the following year.
Yep.
And critically,
which is what we all want.
Which is what
we don't want to be.
If we can reduce chemicals,
in
absolutely. And as the weeds have got really clever and they've become herbicide resistant, across the world there's 271 species that it doesn't react anymore to chemicals. It's a bit like when we overuse penicillin. You can put it in that same stuff. So those weeds have become resistant to it. And so what we can do by mechanically smashing them up is we disrupt the weed cycle and then put it back on there. So the organic material adds a positive to the soil over time, Because we're making it smaller, it breaks down quicker in Australia's environment.
Right.
And the best.
Well, it can't germinate again.
It can't germinate. And, we've had independently tested about ryegrass is the hardest weed to kill, we've got scientific evidence around that we kill up to 99% of those seeds. So next year,
That's
a
incredible.
lot of them are gone. A lot of them are gone.
I mean, the good news is the lack of chemicals.
Yeah, there's two bits on that, because yes, it's less chemicals, but the secondary, the actual application of chemicals requires diesel to run out of a tractor. So you're actually doing two saves for the environment, if you like. One
And
is
cost.
less chemicals, and absolutely cost, and that's critical for production from the farmer's perspective, because if you can remove weeds, all the nutrients in the water in Australia particularly can actually grow a better crop. So your yield should go up as well, plus you reduce your cost in operating.
Well, that's clearly like in the driest country in the world that we're trying to grow food produce in.
Absolutely, and the other key piece is that when that smashed weed seeds organic matter falls on the ground, it actually protects the subsoil moisture. So generally,
because you're putting more.
We're just putting a mulch over the top.
More mulch, yeah, more mulch on the top.
And water's our biggest challenge in Australia to grow crops anyway. So why wouldn't we protect it?
So basically, anybody who knows about gardening of any description would know that mulching reduces the need for more water because there's not so much evaporation.
Absolutely.
But when you think of those enormous fields where our grain is grown, you realise, the sun can be sucking up water with such a thirst.
Absolutely, and you want to protect the water, and it might be selfish, but you want it to grow that crop, because the best thing we can do is water it and let it grow.
The crop you want to grow, not the crop you don't want to grow.
Yes, and all of us are home handyman gardeners, and everybody knows, as you pointed out, that you put mulch on there, you get better growth because that's where it's been channeled, and it's not just the water that it's robbing, but it's all the nutrients in the soil. So if you can actually benefit that's another side benefit, if you like. Amazing.
The government's involved with this now as well, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got some very good support from the federal government over the last, since we start. But most recently, we've actually been approved a grant under the Industry Growth Fund, which is all about companies growing and scaling up and going overseas, which is where we're headed. And they're basically after a pretty tough selection process. We've been granted $3.1 million to take our product globally.
I mean, that's brilliant, and that's really, thank goodness for the government doing that. But you think of countries, for example, like Ukraine, that was growing so much of the world's food crops. Clearly, things aren't easy for them over there to be still doing that, no doubt. And if government can assist, these are ways that they can assist that isn't blowing everybody up.
I think so. It wouldn't be a bad thing. Is this technology, we want to take it globally, and there's no reason it can't work in all over the world. From a production sense, we're about 3 to 4% of the grains produced in Australia. So therefore, there's 97 to 96% of market opportunity for our product. If we can take this ag
with an increase in our product because of this as well.
Yeah, well that's right, because it'll increase our productivity. But if you could take it there and turn around and saying, well, how good is this technology coming from Australia? I mean, it's not a bad thing for us to be hitched up with, and that's why the federal government's so supportive, is to say that we could take a lot longer to do it on our own, but with genuine government support like that, we can actually accelerate that, and we'll be dispatching, literally growing from dozens now to, the aim is by 2028 exporting 1,000.
Amazing. Just also to make the point that if a farmer or a grower has already got equipment, this can sit on the back of it. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it fits up to a modern combine harvester. It sits at the back. And so
that would have ordinarily whipped up everything.
Yeah, that's right. They just flung it out the back, so it's going there. So the modern combine harvester is all about collecting as much grain as possible, and then the residue basically drops out the back. So we've done a lot of work, research and development, product development, so we can fit up to John Deere, we can fit up to Case IH, we can fit up to New Holland, and we can fit up to Claas Lexion. So, and between them, those four big producers, they're making, about 30,000 combines a year, and they dominate the global market.
A bit mind-boggling, isn't it?
Very much so.
Wasn't the inventors didn't the inventors, the Australian inventors, originally invent the harvester, the combine harvester? Wasn't that an Australian invention? You're not sure.
No.
I've got a feeling I've read that in history books when I was but a youth going to high school, an agricultural high school I went to, and I'm pretty sure there was an Australian guy who invented the original harvester.
Yeah, there's been lots of, and I think there was some sort of involvement around that in Victoria, but from an Australian perspective, the stump jump plough that we've invented here. Yeah, so we did that. The hills hoist. There's plenty of innovation and smarts coming out of Australia, and
we're not as silly as they thought we were.
No.
But speaking of that, we've got to take a short break, and we'll be back in a tick. Mark Ashenden is a special guest in this episode of Our Time, and we're talking about Mark. What are we talking about?
I've seen Terminator, I hope.
Yes, I just wanted. I was hoping you were going to say the Seed Terminator.
Well, we do things,
echo.
Things like the weeds won't be back.
Oh, the weeds won't be back. Okay, I like that. Now, it's great to have an invention. But what do you do with an invention when you've invented it?
Well, the good thing is that Nick, my favourite nephew sometimes, did the invention, and basically I've literally known him all his life.
Funny about that.
Yeah, it's strange like that, yeah. And so when he approached it, we sat down together in about 2012 and said, if it works, Nick, I'll help you commercialise it. And so that's where the journey started. And
okay,
then
so
we got serious.
before we move on with that journey, let's go back to your journey, because you came from the middle of Australia.
Yes, I grew up in Alice Springs, and so that was from the 60s through to mid-70s, and then we left in 75.
We being your parents? Family.
Yes, the whole family left in 75, and we went across to...
what did you do wrong? Did you have to leave town?
Well, no, I didn't do anything wrong.
Oh, okay.
But I won't comment on the rest. But and then, so I then joined what was the Savings Bank of South Australia back in 1977, I think.
We were all with that at one time.
We were, and when I left school.
So you're a bank manager? Did you become a bank manager?
I did eventually become to that, and that
So was that the start of your sort of business acumen, do you think?
I think so, and it was definitely there. And I refer to myself now as a reformed banker and a recovering accountant. But the
I
learning,
like recovering accountant.
Well, accountants do get a bad rap, but at the end of the day, if we don't have cash, we can't pay people, and I think that's the big strength, and probably banking and accounting.
And if people don't need help actually to work out how they can help pay people,
and then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's probably the value add is the business, and making sure we set it up and we do it right. And while there's increased governance and requirements, starting up a business, I describe as startups as walking through the valley of death, and because it is hard work.
Well, you don't know what the future is. So you're in Kangaroo Island.
Yeah, and and then joined the bank, and then I was lucky enough to go to Alice Springs when they first opened a branch interstate. That was under the State Bank in those days. And then continued the banker's migratory pattern. So went to Victor Harbour, went to Bordertown, Port Pirie,
everybody
Alice
moved
Springs.
around. Well,
we did. Yeah.
Got your family. Do you have a family by then?
Yes. My wonderful wife Helen and 4 beautiful children. And when we, I guess the children were going to secondary school, we decided that wherever we were, that's where the family was going to.
So you ended up in South Australia.
And so I accepted a position in Adelaide and worked in the city for a while, and our family left us as they grew up and left, rather than we leaving them around there. Yeah, well, but it was good. We encouraged them to leave, and then we regret that they left.
Yes, of course. I think that's very common for most parents, isn't it?
I think so. And
did they value your advice as a previous bank manager?
Oh, they do. And to their credit, and I guess my credit and our family's credit, where there's questions where let's go and ask Dad still happens, and managing
They're not
money as
asking,
well.
yes, but they're not asking the bank of mum and dad for a loan.
No, but if the Bank of Mum and Dad had some, they're welcome to it.
Well, you will soon, I'm sure. Because, so did your nephew come to you and say, look, I've got this great idea, Unc, but I don't know where to go with it? Is that how it happened?
A little bit like that. We were literally at the front of my, we're fortunate enough to have a beach house on Kangaroo Island. Nick was still based over there on Kangaroo Island and he's back there now. And he basically convinced me that this could work. I said, if it does work and if it kills at a certain percentage on the prototype that we had to build, I would do whatever we could to do that.
Where do you start to think about where to go and who would build that for you?
Yeah, well, it was, that was a challenge as well. At that time when we first started getting serious, there was the depletion of the car industry. They were all leaving. So to me, there was so much capability and capacity in Adelaide to make something. So it was an easy choice to say that there's got to be people in here that have got the smarts to build what Nick had designed.
Right, and where did you do that?
So we did that down in Edwardstown. There's a firm called Nylastics which have backed us in, and we've backed them in, and they've actually basically take a few drawings and made it for us. And then we literally took it out to a farmer on the York Peninsula and ran the test through to see that the prototype could actually be viable. Would it actually kill seeds at a sufficient rate? And it did. And so then we turned around and said, okay, well, we need to convince a group of farmers to invest in this startup. And also, to their credit, we offered them a share of what we're going to build. And then they took the first right of refusal to buy the prototype. And so we had 9 farmers with 9 prototypes. And then, so that was in the harvest of 2016. And so we have gradually built up.
So that's grown really quickly to the point that it is now.
Yes, and that product is, and then one of the challenges that we've faced is, yes, we've got to make the machine and we've got to do the research and it's got to kill weed seeds and it's got to be able to fit it up to the John Deere or the Case or the New Holland. But it also is introducing a new industry, secondary industry to the market, old industry, because nobody knows.
No.
And the dream of harvest weed seed control was always there, and there were some studies done back in the 80s and 90s and it was a dream then, and they said between $50 and $80 a hectare could be the uplift. And as it's turned out, that's pretty accurate figures for predicting back then. But we've still got to build this and we've still got to use the manufacturing capacity in Adelaide, because we want to make them here.
But that's almost like a 10-year cycle from the beginning to now.
Absolutely it is. And
incredible.
The journey's been going on there, and we launched the product in the market in 2016 domestically. And we've got about 750 units domestically, and we've got about 30.
And that's still being made by the same company?
We've shared it around. We've got 4 or 5, so hopefully, well, not hopefully, the reality is that they can breathe in and breathe out with us, because demand is a bit fickle. And in the middle of our growth, that thing called COVID turned up. The old manufacturing days of make things just in time.
No one to make it, of course.
And so we had to get there, and there was a number of times where I was, let's say, exasperated when we were holding up a delivery to a farmer about to harvest of a $100,000 Australian dollar machine for a $375 belt. Because we'd run out of them in Australia.
Ridiculous,
yes.
And
so, those are the challenges that we've faced going through there, but we're committed to building them here in Adelaide.
Well, the good news is that everybody was facing the same challenge, but it doesn't make it any easier when you're ready to harvest and it isn't there.
Yeah, well,
and I've already spent the money, chaps.
Well, that's right. And, you can tell a farmer that it's not ready because...
but the wheat is.
Yes, that's right. The grain is ready to go. And in Australia, one of the other learnings is in Australia, the crop, when it's ripe, gets drier in Australia. And we ran some prototypes in Canada because they have a harvest just before us. So we could learn from that. And in 2019, when I got photos of a snowstorm with a harvester running in it, I said, why are you sending this to me? And then they said, that's the seed terminator at the back blowing out all this snow. And so
Good gracious.
We have to understand that 97% of the market's outside of Australia, and the Northern Hemisphere is a dominant producer of grains and legumes. So that's part of the next stage of the dream.
Actually, you made a good point. So it's not just grain, it's legumes as well.
Yes.
So just run through the sort of things that you're harvesting, just so we all understand.
Beans, canola, wheat, barley. So
it's pretty much everything that comes out the ground.
Yeah.
That weeds could grow amongst.
That's it, and we need to make sure that whatever if we can bust the cycle up, and that's what we're about.
Have you got a private little garden version of this that I could sort the weeds out in my garden?
Yeah, well, my friends and family are pretty keen to have one. I've got a small orchard, and I would love one attached to there, but the answer is no at the moment.
No.
But we are looking at other industries which do have some synergy around that. They've got weed problems, for example, the almond industry.
Yes,
so we've actually done some prototype and research and development work on making sure we can build something that actually eliminates their weeds and stuff. So it's
Isn't it incredible though, the human mind, the ability to actually, first of all, as your nephew has conceived something like this, and then the realisation that you just can't do it all yourself. You've got to have other people involved.
And I think that's part of the community or the business opportunity, because we can sit here and go, and I think we could be a small niche provider and sit in Adelaide and make a very good living and less stress. But the vision of taking this offshore and is just
it's so exciting.
Well, and anything that's going to reduce chemical application and diesel,
absolutely,
that's got to be a good thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to reduce a little time now because we're going to take another short break, and we'll be back in a tip. We've been talking to Mark Ashenden about the Seed Terminator. I just wish we had echo there.
We could do that.
Mark, we're just talking in the break about how hard it is, once you've invented something like this, to know who to go to make it happen. When your nephew came to you, did you think, hey, I can do this because I've been a bank manager, or did you just think, hey, here's an opportunity to really make a difference?
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter. You're making a difference. I mean, Nick's vision is unique because he's seen a problem. He's actually, his early studies were about doing engineering, and so for him to take the theory and put it into a machine and then wrap his arms around each other, if you like, and just saying, how can we make a difference to the world, I suppose. It might be a bit egotistical, but the fact is that any time we reduce chemical application and we can increase productivity from a farmer, it can't be a bad thing. And then
and for the health of the world.
Well, it's got to be positive, and to be able to ride along with that vision has been challenging, absolutely. And part of our process that we did was we introduced a feedback loop. So, we're speaking direct to the farmers and saying, we think we've got this idea. We work with them, and then we review it halfway through harvest, at the end of harvest, and saying, how can we make this better? And is it working? And can you see the difference in your paddock in the following years? So, all of that takes cooperation between a number of different parties, and to have, I guess, for us to be standing up there and saying, well, we're going to make a difference here together. And, it's been for me, it was, the next time I retire, I'll probably do a better job. But in the meantime, we can, make a difference.
It's great though. You've had a lot of publicity about this. I don't know, has it been international? It's certainly been Australia-wide.
Yeah, it would certainly be. Australia we've got a very strong domestic business, and we always will. There's no intention to move away, but the growth opportunity is significant offshore. And if we can get to the position by 2028 to be exporting 1,000 units a year,
and all made here in Adelaide.
All want to make it here in Adelaide, and so what we need to do is develop the techniques, the tools, and the people to actually be making 1,000 of these a year. And the early estimates that we've done in conjunction with double checked by the federal government is that if we can make 1,000, we're probably going to add another 300 jobs into Adelaide here to make them at the quality and quantity that will fulfil a global supplier. You know, we can't muck around with a global original equipment manufacturer like a New Holland or a Case IH or a John Deere. We've got to do it right every time.
Sense. Well, congratulations on everything you've achieved so far. And I hope that's brought something to you that often we don't really understand the innovation that's happening out of our own little world. And this is going to change the world, we hope. Thanks, Mark.
It's going to make a difference. Thank you.
So until next time on Our Time, keep yourself nice till then. Bye.